What's up, Deltas? Where do we even start with this one? One of the most ambitious, one of the most far-reaching Star Wars single-player games, and a game that I've wanted to talk about for ages. This is Second Wind, Star Wars Republic Commando. Republic Commando follows a crack squad of special clone commandos known as Delta Squad, and it follows them during a few of their campaigns fighting for the Grand Army of the Republic during the Clone Wars. Delta Squad is made up of 4 clone commandos, RC-1138, 1140, 1262 and 1207, better known as Boss, Fixer, Scorch and Sev. You know, like in other games or in films when the soldiers refer to themselves as being like brothers? Yeah, well, you know what? This lot, they literally are brothers. They're clones who were born and raised and bonded together at the Topoka cloning facilities on the ocean world of Kamino. The pod brothers, as they call themselves, of Delta Squad were bonded and trained by the very best hand-picked Mandalorian commandos. This not only makes them a closer unit, but a far more efficient and deadly fighting force than the sum of just 4 normal clones. Elite clone commandos like Delta Squad would be covertly deployed on super special, super secret missions across the galaxy where ruthless efficiency and deadly force could be guaranteed. They're kind of like the MOSSAD of Star Wars, and they are just the coolest looking lads. So Republic Commando starts right at the beginning of the Clone Wars. The game then goes on to cover 3 campaigns during the Clone Wars: Geonosis, an abandoned Space Hulk style acclimator assault ship, and the Wookiee homeworld of Kashyyk. As you'd expect from that rather short summary, the game is almost all action all the time, but the pacing of this game is absolutely ace. The second act of the campaign is actually my favourite because the action takes a back seat. The game slows down and it focuses more on storytelling beats. The abandoned assault ship that you find yourselves on was the first home of Delta Squad, and it starts out as this kind of like spooky haunted house kind of vibe. The mission starts with the team splitting up. We realise just how vulnerable an individual clone is by themselves. Boss's voiceover reminisces about their ersatz childhood together, and it reinforces how much these battle brothers rely on each other, but also how that they would fight and they would die for each other given a moment's notice. You get so caught up in the bond of these 4 lads, you know, so invested in them as a unit. It's easy to forget that, you know, these are actually the bad guys. The Clone Wars cartoon and games like Battlefront 2 and Republic Commando, they suddenly painted the clones as heroes. We've traditionally been raised to believe that the white armour of a stormtrooper is the sign of a bad guy, but here we go with these moral grey areas, and this level of nuance is probably the best thing that prequel era Star Wars ever achieved. As you know or can probably tell, story is my favourite thing. It's the thing I like to talk most about here on the Second Wind reviews. A good story is what I enjoy most about computer games, and growing closer to these characters over the course of that story was very, very good. The fantastic writing and the brilliant voice acting, which I will get to in a moment, means that the characters of Delta Squad really just came alive for me, kept me invested for the whole campaign. The third act of Republic Commando just ramps up and ramps up and ramps up, rushing you faster and faster towards the game's finale, which unfortunately feels like it catches up a little bit too soon. Before I even had time to react, the ending had happened, you know, it had just rushed out of nowhere, completely hit me on a blind side, and it's a real heartbreaker. I didn't see it coming. Fantastic, really. A great ending to the story, and truthfully it's a testament, I suppose, to the faith that LucasArts had in the quality of their staff. Also, I think, to the innovative development ethos of the mid-2000s games industry. Long-time LucasArts designer Darren Stinnett had grown bored with the idea of this clean and shiny Star Wars universe. It's all about these single lone heroes, and he wanted to create a Star Wars game that was darker and grittier and focused on the interaction of a squad of soldiers. Stinnett had been with the company since Dark Forces, you know, he's been there from day dot, but he had noticed that there was a growing trend for war shooters. So, inspired by the likes of Ghost Recon, Stinnett and his design team tried to find ways to legitimately integrate that dark, gritty idea of a military shooter into the Star Wars universe. It's a tough ask, so, you know, props for even trying it. Stinnett brought in a military SWAT advisor so the dev team could learn how to carry real guns. They learnt how to enter and clear objectives as a team. They learnt what it meant to be a combat squad. In the game, the clones carry a special gun which can change into an assault rifle, a sniper rifle, or an RPG by changing attachments. Now, it's not particularly realistic, but it's f***ing cool. So whether you're ordering a clone to take up a sniper position or whether you're ordering him to blow up a tank. These options underpin that flexible tactical idea that they were trying to achieve. Each level in Republic Commando has been designed to deliver impactful fixed set pieces using the clone's abilities and using those different weapon attachments. The storytelling might be a little bit transparent in some of these areas, but it's still fun to do, and it's all about fulfilling that squaddy soldiering narrative. For a Star Wars game, Republic Commando has an uncharacteristically high level of violence. Blood and viscera spatters up all over the clones' visors, some enemies explode into bits, heads can be blown off, dismembered bodies and blood stains are litter in some parts of the game. At some points it looks more like Doom than something from Star Wars. And when LucasArts showed this game off at E3 in 2004, it was this gritty, action-oriented shooter with the player controlling 4 gritty soldiers. The combat mechanics, of course, were down pat. They were absolutely solid due to all the work that Darren Stinnett and his team had put in, but the game wasn't very Star Warsy. George Lucas himself saw the game and said that it just wasn't humorous enough. You know, it was too grim. It needed an amount of levity. And so the high concept for Republic Commando became a shooter for a Star Wars audience, not a Star Wars game for the shooter audience. So as well as all this tactical detail and all this grit, the focus had to be on coolness and fun. The writing team was headed up by Mike Stemme, whose previous writing work had included writing the scripts for Jedi Outcast and Jedi Academy. Stemme and his team added distinct personalities to each member of Delta Squad to help the players get invested in those characters. They added different colour schemes for the clones, creating this idea that the Commandos have personalised their armour. And when I was writing this script, I actually realised the personalities are kind of like the Ninja Turtles personalities, each one with their own sort of single overriding personality characteristics. But I don't really mind because the Ninja Turtles are fucking awesome. And it's that human connection, you know, that focus on characters and on story. That's what rounds off the sharper edges of this game and makes it a bit less gritty and a bit more Star Wars. I don't know if it's a bug, but I want to mention here that whenever I order my squad to heal up, Sev never does it. I always had to order him twice. This was probably some kind of confirmation bias once I had it in my head, so it's probably not even true, but I felt like it was him saying, "No man, I ain't got time to bleed." The most significant difference in crafting all of these different personalities in Delta Squad though is in the voice acting. Now I told you I'd get to this bit. Now originally all of the clones were voiced by one guy, Tamara Morrison. You know Tamara Morrison because he's the guy who played Jango Fett, probably most known recently for voicing Moana's dad, and he's voiced practically every appearance of Jango or Boba Fett in all of the computer games. Even though my boy Tamara is an absolute superstar, all 4 clones being voiced by one guy kind of didn't have that group dynamic that LucasArts were going for. And so what LucasArts did is basically they hired Tamara soundalikes or people that could do an impression of a Kiwi. This does beg the question of why do clones inherit their accents? I mean, why would they all be Kiwi? Fixer's voice was supplied by Kid Beyond, aka Andrew Chaikin. Now, Chaikin is fantastic. In his capacity as a voice actor, he's even been Commander Cody. He was Commander Cody in the Revenge of the Sith PlayStation 2 game. But he's appeared in scores of Star Wars games. Most recently, he's been doing a lot of work in the Telltale games. Very interesting guy, you should look him up. Jonathan Cooke is another person who's had a strong career in both voice acting and in computer games. But I still think the best thing he's ever done is being Sev in Republic Commando. Scorch is played by Raphael Sparge, and you know what? He's not even done that much voice acting recently. He's a proper actor now. But he did voice Karth in Knights of the Old Republic, and then if you've played Mass Effect, you'll know he's quite obviously Caden. Most importantly though, highlight of his career quite clearly is that he was Terry the Seabee in Grim Fandango. And that's all it takes, you see, a small choice like that, and now you've got 4 actors, all bringing their own nuance to the roles. And the performance is elevated significantly. George Lucas suggested one way to lighten the mood of the game was to get Robin Williams to voice one of the Commandos. Now, LucasArts didn't go with it. I mean, obviously it's kind of a ludicrous idea, but in hindsight, we now know that Williams kind of had the acting chops. He could have given a very intense performance. Just imagine it. I mean, imagine the marketing for a start. But even then, that still isn't what's best about Repcom. It's not even the great voice acting. It's not the tactical gameplay. It's not the emotive story arc. It's not the absolutely great creature and set design. No. The star of the show in Republic Commando is the incredible music. Republic Commando has its own original score by Jesse Harlin. It's one of very few Star Wars games to actually get its own score. Harlin's score doesn't rely on clips from John Williams' music, which makes it very unique. In fact, in its original iteration, Harlin's sound was much darker, much grittier, and more experimental to better reflect the darker tone that they were going for at that time. But after the same feedback and the round of revisions that introduced the lightness and the fun into Republic Commando's core concept, the score was altered to better reflect the Star Wars roots of the game. The Harlin's score still carries that high-octane, moody texture, but it's expertly wrangled and it sounds like it belongs in the Skywalker stable. One of Jesse Harlin's biggest hurdles was the fact that John Williams had never conceived of a leitmotif for good guy stormtroopers. So in order to immerse the players in the heroic clone atmosphere, Republic Commando needed a rousing, heroic chorus. Harlin wanted choral music to convey a human connection to the Commandos, but with a choir, English, Latin, they're not particularly good choices. This is the galaxy far, far away. And so Harlin started to create his own language, basic words at first and sentences, phrases. Harlin's then girlfriend was a linguistics major, and she actually helped him come up with this brand new alien language. Harlin then spoke to David Collins, who was the audio lead at LucasArts, and he showed him what he'd done. He was like, well, we need a name for this language. I kind of want to speak to Big George about this. Now, like most of us, Jesse Harlin's a huge nerd, and what he was hoping for was that Collins and Lucas would give him the go-ahead to call his language Mandalorian. Karen Travis was writing the Republic Commando books at the same time, and so they brought her in, and she loved it. Lucas gave it the green light, and just like that, the Mandalorians were back in continuity. The Mandalorian language ended up being used for quite a few choral battle songs on the score, including the banging title tune Brothers All. Not many games had original scores at this time, and Republic Commandos is so special. That fast-paced vocal theme, it stretches the boundaries of what you'd consider to be an acceptable Star Wars sound, but it just absolutely drowns the player in that Republic Commando ethos. Jesse Harlin would then go on to score the Knights of the Old Republic games and The Force Unleashed alongside Mark Grisky. Karen Travis would then go on to use the Mandalorian language in her books, and Harlin's linguistic major girlfriend agreed to marry him. Ozzy went on stage and did a great show. A happy story all round. In the modern era, Republic Commando has got a bit of a cult following. Delta Squad got a series of EU novels, as previously mentioned. Dave Filoni, the supervising producer for the Clone Wars cartoon, liked Delta Squad so much that he asked for them to appear in the show, and so they were written into a Season 3 episode called Witches of the Mist. That makes Delta Squad officially canon, by the way. The modern PC port of the game plays really well. It's still a steady, if simple, shooter. I couldn't get mouse smoothing working, but there's mods for VSync, widescreen support, and even a couple of decent graphics patches. Republic Commando is £7 on GOG and Steam at the time of writing this review, which honestly doesn't get you very far in today's games. Now, of course, this isn't about modern games being bad or whatever. This is me just celebrating the past and talking about a game that you actually might have missed, because this one did fly under the radar a little bit. I've got to give some props now to Brett Douville. So much of the history and so much of the insight in this video is taken from a series of Let's Plays by Republic Commando's lead developer Brett Douville. He's done a 4-part series, and he plays through the game. He invites old LucasArts employees onto the stream to chat. It is a thoroughly entertaining series. It's seriously good. I highly recommend you go over there and check them out. If you like Star Wars games, check out some other ones I've got on the channel. That would be great. And I don't know, hit subscribe, I guess. Cheers very much for watching. Ta-da.